On this week's episode of Part of the Art with me, Rebecca Godden, we have the wonderful Katie Anna McConnell. Katie Anna is an actress and dancer with multiple medical conditions. She uses mobility aids, including a power-assisted wheelchair and walking sticks, and is trained in musical theatre. She currently tours with shows primarily for young people and families, using drama to explore important topics like neurodivergency. Delivering access consultancy to companies working in arts and culture, Katie offers disability equality training sessions. These cover a wide range of subjects to make the industry a more inclusive and accepting environment. Now, access across the arts is hugely important to me, so I really hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did having it. We apologise for sound levels on this episode being a bit wonky at times. I wore my AirPods for the first time of recording this online, and let's just say I won't be using them again. Enjoy.
Hi, Katie. Welcome to Part of the Art. Thank you so much for coming on today.
So much for having me. I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, going to support a friend's new venture. And I was like, actually, could I extra support a friend's new venture? Could I volunteer myself? So yeah, that was great.
Absolutely. Anyone listening to this, if you want to come on the pod and you're interesting, then please message me, DM me, and let's chat, because it's just so nice to have people that are like, yeah, I want to support it and also come on and talk. And that's what it's all about. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Now, I have asked you to think of a little icebreaker. I like to start the pod every time in this way. Have you said something lately that maybe should have stayed in your mind?
So I'm neurodivergent, and therefore a lot of the things I say are probably filtered differently to what other people think should come out and should stay in my brain. So yeah, sort of societal context issues. But to be quite honest, I can't think of a specific example other than I talk to my dog a lot. She is a service animal in training. And so I have as much conversation with her as I do everyone else. And if somebody else was a fly on the wall overhearing that conversation, they would probably look at me and go, that's an inside thought. You need to be sharing that, and especially not with your canine companion. So yeah.
You're like, okay, yeah. But you know what? I love it actually in our industry that a lot of us, not all of us, maybe if you work, I've had a conversation with someone that works more behind the scenes and things, and maybe they don't overshare too much. But I think as actors, as performers, we're very much heart on our sleeve, and we're just like, bleh. Yeah, a lot of the time.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think my conversations with Bella, my little pup, is definitely probably the strangest, or things that just don't need to be said out loud really, but are.
Oh, well, I love it that our pets, though, we can just say anything to them, and they're probably thinking in their head, what is she doing or saying? But they can't respond, so they get everything.
100%.
They get their therapy.
Yeah. My partner and my friends can tell me that I'm blabbing on or I'm being annoying or, right, Katie, yeah, we get it. She can't. She's got a sentence. Yeah, make the most of it. Absolutely.
I love that. Now, you see so much stuff within the art. Now, I know on your Instagram, you review theatre as well, maybe in the form of kind of a reel with a friend, or you write a post where you do a story, but also you just love going to theatres in general for yourself and for the art, but also you're such an advocate for accessibility, which we'll come on to in a bit. So you also kind of attend venues kind of to rate them in terms of accessibility as well. So you're in and around theatre mostly within the art. So what is the thing that you've seen? You can only pick one. I know this is hard. The only one thing that you've seen recently, the last thing that you saw that you thought, oh, that has just evoked such a spark in me, such a movement within me.
Goodness, it is so hard, and it's especially difficult this year. I have beat my personal record this year. So this year I saw, well, I say this year, in 2024, I saw 181 shows, which is the equivalent of being at the theatre every other day. And that doesn't include, obviously, when I'm at a venue for work. That just includes seeing shows. So yeah, I assess them.
Wild.
I go to do audit, and I just go to see myself. But so there is really, really a huge amount to pick from. And I think in the running would be ballet shoes at the National Theatre. That was phenomenal. The Christmas Carol at the Old Vic, because they do it every year and I've never seen it before. And after this trip, it's definitely going to be an annual tradition for me. But I think the one that I'd really have to say was a little bit less recently, but a few months ago, I saw Starlight Express at the Chancellor Theatre in Wembley. And oh my goodness, it was amazing. Wimbledon, even. I get those two mixed up. It was one of the two. And yeah, it was just so brilliant. And I had never listened to any of the soundtrack before. I knew like the title song, but I never sort of looked into it. I didn't know the storyline. And when I got there, I mean, the whole auditorium and stage is wheelchair accessible because they do it all on skates. So it has to be. And so yeah, I mean, it was camp, it was fun, it was colourful, it was an absolute party. And I mean, it sounds really dull, but I also have to think about things like the booking process, because if it's really hard for me to get tickets to something, regardless of how good the show is, actually the sort of enjoyment factor of that goes down, because it's taken me 2 weeks, 3 hours and 8 emails to try and get there in the first place, which is like, doesn't really make up for it. Whereas Starlight Express was so easy to navigate. KX tickets have a brilliant access policy. I could request what I needed, and it wasn't stupidly expensive to sit in the accessible seats because there were so many options. And yeah, it really got me thinking about how other shows could be as fun. And it's not necessarily about diversity and inclusivity. There is no sort of access focused storyline in there. They're just trains. But actually, the environment itself is inherently so inclusive and accessible for such a range of people. If a wheelchair user auditioned, they could be part of the show just as one wheelchair user. And that is such a rare thing to see, that I really, really, really liked it. So yeah, that trained really quite significantly.
Yeah. And it sounds amazing. Every time I hear these from people, I'm like, I need to go for that immediately. And that's so interesting. You're talking about, just, it's almost like, I don't know if this is the right way, probably is not the right way to say it, but it's almost like accessibility by accident in a way.
Ability, that's it. No,
that's a better way to say it. Yeah, accidental accessibility. And I was actually talking about that. So how me and Katie know each other is Katie was a participator at Blue Apple Theatre, where I'm associate director, and we are a learning disabled theatre company, and our performers have learning disabilities. And we were talking about this actually with our last show, the fact that all of our performances are accidentally accessible because we make them accessible for our performers, that it just, and for our audiences, it just means that the whole process just is entwined with accessibility from the get-go, from the devising, from the script writing, from the rehearsal space, right into the venue. It's not an afterthought. Because we were talking, we were saying, we should do someone said, one of our trustees said, you should do a relaxed performance. And we were kind of like, all of us actually accidentally relaxed, because we don't mind people sitting in the audience or talking or having their devices or needing to go out. And, we have people on stage that are doing that. So why would we, we had not really thought about it. It's just part of it. And we were also saying about, audio description and all of that. And we caption all of our shows. We have that as an accessibility thing as well, because some of our performers may be a little tricky to understand at times. So we could do that like operas. You have it up there so that people can follow along, even if they can't hear what's being sung, because opera is, it's not as accessible as speaking. Singing is, harder to understand. So, we were really thinking and just thinking, great, we should maybe think about it a little bit more in terms of just what else can we do? And from that, we hadn't had a visual story before, for example, for people coming in, and that's all part of a relaxed performance. So we made a visual story with the Theatre Royal and all of that. And it was so nice to be chatting about it and thinking, okay, we accidentally do this, but what can we do better?
Absolutely.
And it's really nice to have that dance in a company, because usually that's not always the case, which you found. And that's how you have kind of come about your career in a way, like part of your career, which is as an artistic access consultant. So can you tell us what that is, what you do, and why you do it, really?
Absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head there. I am a performer by trade, by name and by nature. And so I went to drama school, like most people, and I trained in musical theatre, I trained in acting, and dance is sort of like my primary passion. And during that time, I became disabled. So I've got a genetic condition, which is now a chronic illness, and it's degenerative, which means there is no sort of cure. It's going to get worse, and there's sort of only management techniques in place. So when I became a wheelchair user at drama school with dance as sort of my, main sort of topic, a lot of my tutors didn't really know what to do with me in that I'm trained to teach their style of dance as is. And then suddenly my legs were pretty much out of action and I was doing it seated. So the building that I trained in wasn't fully wheelchair accessible. A lot of studios were only up the stairs and there was no lift in the building, which has changed now, which is great. But yeah, it was really difficult not only to be provided for, but also to communicate my access requirements, because that was new to me. I did not know any other wheelchair users at the time. I didn't know any other physically disabled people at the time. I had never seen on TV, in a book, film or media, or on stage, I'd never seen someone with a condition like mine, or that looked like me, or that had to use the mobility aids I was now dependent on, doing the job that I wanted to do. There was absolutely no sort of looking up to, well, I am a queer person, so but I can do that, because look at all of these openly queer celebrities absolutely thriving now. So we're past that, and we've got role models to look up to there. I never had that, really, sort of being disabled.
And that must have been so hard, just being like, I'm a young person that wants to make it in the industry, but I've not got a role model, and I can't see people doing this. So how am I meant to do this?
100%. And also, what was actually a little bit more heartbreaking is not that there weren't any there, it's that there were, and I still didn't know about them. Because looking now, 10 years ago, there were wheelchair users and there were disabled people in the media, etc. But in mainstream training, it's not, you don't get shown it, you're not introduced to it.
Like both, is it?
As a young person, I was then left to go and seek it out for myself. And I found online disability community and inclusive art and companies like Blue Apple. I was like, oh my goodness, it exists. It does. And I can do that. And part of that was that I basically looked at that and I said, like, I don't want any other 14-year-old who is missing their mock assessment to be told by their physiotherapist before going to a drama school audition, look, I don't think it's going to work. I think you should pick something else, rather than, I think it's going to be really difficult for you. Here are the options in place and here are the accessible routes for you. Why was that not the conversation I had? Why was I already even sat my GCSEs, that the career I wanted and have already been working towards a pre-professional level isn't going to work because my tendons don't work? Like, really, that should, and I just didn't want anybody else to experience that. And I don't think, that my one job is going to change that for everyone. But even if doing the work that I now do means that one person has one opportunity that is accessible, whereas before it wouldn't have been, my job is done. And so that's what I do. So as an access consultant, I work with venues, production companies, places of education like drama schools, etc., basically just to make all of their policies and practices more equitable and inclusive for a whole range of people with lots of different sort of protected characteristics, if we're looking at sort of the Equality Act side of things. So I help shows integrate captions and BSL interpretation, because so often they are sort of marketed as assisted performances and they happen in a 6-month run, and that's just not okay. Sort of bottom line, I'm not even saying, I don't really think it's good enough, and it's just not. And so, I work a lot with companies to make sure that actually, if you're there holding an audition, that if a wheelchair user turns up, if a visually impaired person turns up, if a deaf or hard of hearing person turns up, they are going to be accommodated, waited for, as equitably as everybody else, because it's so often things that it's not done with malicious intent, but they just don't think about it. It's not considered.
Again, we, like I said about earlier, it's an afterthought. And that the thinking of the process needs to change. It needs to be ingrained in the artistic process, in the coordination program, from the producers, from the directors, from, the marketing team, the people that actually know that they can access things as well. And it shouldn't just be, like you said, a bit of a tick box.
Yeah.
Not even a bit of, I'm shying away from actually saying, no, it's a tick box.
Yeah.
And it has been for too long. And I know me and you had a big conversation on Instagram not long ago. We were, sharing voice notes, we were debating, we were kind of advocating. And I used to work in a large scale commercial venue, and nearly 10 years ago I worked there, and things haven't moved along that much at all since I worked there. And the conversations that we were having, like you just said, the fact that there is one captain performance, one audio described, one BSL in that run, not even every time that I visited, we were, you know, a receiving venue, a receiving house, big shows like Blood Brothers, Lion King, you know, like all the big stuff.
Yeah.
And some of those shows were with us for 10 weeks. And we'd only have a handful of access performances. And they wouldn't get booked in unless myself, as the creative learning and access manager, made them happen. And I begged for the money, and I begged, borrowed, and stole from different departments, you know, to get budget for it. It wasn't even, I didn't even have a separate budget. It, you know, it was like, where can we find the money, the extra money for this? Like, well, no, it should just be there. Why have you made me an access manager if I can't actually make it accessible? So you know, without going into it too much, it just was warped in my sense. And you know, I was the early 20s and I had that job when I went into it. So I think I was, you know, I was maybe a little bit naive as well, a little bit, you know, why can't the world be like this and be accessible? And I hadn't, it reopened my eyes to it as well, you know, as someone that isn't disabled myself. Like, you know, I also felt like a little bit of a fraud at times. But then we've spoken about this as well, that actually we need people that are non-disabled to also advocate for, doubt about, because accessibility doesn't mean disability.
Yeah.
That is quite a quick misconception, not a misconception, a quick thing that people think they're disabled. No, so many other things. Like at the moment, I've got an injury and I'm going to the theatre tomorrow. I'm going to need accessible, you know, knee measures done for me so that I can comfortably watch the show. So it's not just that, and it's sensory, it's so much more, and it's identity, it's all of those things. I think what you're doing is so great, and the word accessibility, I think, covers a plethora of things, and it's like, it's regenerating, it's modernizing it, and with forms like Instagram and TikTok and things, we can see it more and talk about it more. And I do hope, like, the generation that was your generation when you were 14 wanting to go into this can see the visibility more than
100%.
maybe you could.
Yeah, I think it's so. I mean, you touched on so many important points there. One of them being things like touring venues. So I used to live in the New Forest, which is
Isolated.
away from London, which was great. But to see an accessible performance, I would have to get the train all the way into the capital city, because shows came round to my local theatre. If they were only there for a week, there was no chance of them having sort of access measures in place. And it's a shame, because people that then do live in regional venues are having not only to wait for one specific date, but that could be a 4-hour journey away, because you know, 3 local venues that it's going to beforehand sort of have any of those provisions. And another thing you mentioned was sort of the financial aspect of it. And I hear this a lot. People reach out to me, or I will message people and say, hey, have you considered this? Or they'll reach out to me and say, hey, I saw that you did this work and I would love to emulate that. Is there some way that we could work together? And I will send over a proposal or fees. And they're like, oh, we don't have a budget for that. Now, first question is, A, why? Yeah. But B, secondly, it sort of reinforces my point that you shouldn't need a separate budget, because these things should be in place already. You know, if you are a receiving house, you should not be waiting until tickets go on sale and then someone contacts you and goes, hi, sorry, are you doing a sensory adapted performance? And then you go, oh, we will be if we have enough interest, and then we will select a date, and then we will
we'll let you know, and you have to cancel all your plans so you can make that date.
People that have already booked tickets, you have to, like, it's such a silly system. Whereas if you just produced the show in the first place, if the actual production inherently had a flexible readmittance policy and, you know, relay screens in the chill out zone that will be in the foyer, all you need is a beanbag. Like, it's really not, you know, and that should be minimum standard. I say all you need. That's not all you can have. There are so many options, and there's always a way to make something more accessible. The most show in the UK at the moment still has improvements to make, and always will, because you can never be finished doing accessibility, because like you say, there's
always growing, and you can never be finished doing anything in the arts. Like we're always adapting, and I think we know that.
Yeah.
Reason doesn't fall under that thinking.
100.
Yeah, it's wild, and you know, we were saying about the screens and stuff as well. We live in, well, we're on the 2nd of January 2025 now. New year. We live in a world where every theatre has got screens pretty much everywhere. Even if they just use them for some promo, they've got a screen. They can do a live relay of the show. Like if it can go backstage, it can go front of house.
Pretty much.
All of these little things where you're like, you know, every venue has an iPad. You can give someone, you've got the means to do it. It's not like we're saying reinvent the wheel and, you know, house all of this equipment that you never had. It's just using what you've got
100%.
to actually reach people. And again, like talking to people, I think, you know, that's why I think it's so important to have people like you that are going into the venue. And I actually did a little bit of it when I left this receiving house. I moved to London, and I was part of the Committee for Equity, North London branch. And as part of that, you know, I was advocating for stuff on a larger level, that actual kind of change and things like that. When I was doing that, I did kind of go in and with my access hat on, and I went into venues and I offered those kind of fees, as it were, things that I just learned and experienced. And it was like rocket science to some people. But again, because this wasn't spoken about, and I'm not saying people are horrible or like malicious or not wanting to do it, not what I'm saying. I think naivety is a big thing, you know, and visibility as well. Like what you said, people just need to, they don't need to, we shouldn't have to, but people shouting about it.
Oh, no, it is, absolutely. And a huge reason for that is things like if a big producer, like a big name, I'm not going to name them, but no one I'm talking about, if they've got a show on Shaftesbury Avenue and it is entirely inaccessible and there's no lift in the venue and you can't buy a carer ticket online and there are no caption performances, but people that don't need those things still buy tickets and sell the run out, that producer will not change their tune. There is, I think, the main issue at the moment, which is changing slowly but surely, and it's not really a process at all, is that there is very little legal obligation to do those things. There is a theatre in London which I now refuse to go to for reviews, for audit. I won't go because I sent them some feedback a few years ago saying, hi, as a wheelchair user visiting your venue with other medical conditions, I have seen so many productions, and every single time I've had a negative experience with access in some way, shape or form, and provided an entire document outlining my experience, and the response I got was, we're doing everything that we are legally obligated to do. If you don't like it, don't come, go and see shows elsewhere. And I just thought, oh my goodness, how can you afford to do that? Now, saying boycotting or cancel culture is the way forward, but if enough people who both do and don't need those things go, hello, sorry, actually, that's not okay anymore, and then accept that standard. No, you do have to be doing those things, not because legislatively you are obliged to, but because actually your show's not going to work if you do not have disabled audiences. And I think until now, people have sort of just been able to get away with that for a little bit too long. But then, like you say, making it accessible for one group automatically makes it accessible for other groups. There's a concept called universal design or sort of universal accessibility, which is things like if you put a lift in, great, wheelchair users. But also, if you've got heavy set pieces, great, I'm sure your stage manager will love you a lot more the fact that you put a lift in. You put a lift in and, oh, you've got parents coming in, great, so their buggy can go up and down, etc., etc. Or just, you know, your cast, it's a touring venue, your cast each have 2 massive suitcases. Yeah, great, then it doesn't take, like, it makes it so much better for everyone. And I just think it's considered. There's a brilliant quote from possibly one of my favorite musicals called Made in Dag, and the protagonist says, nothing is changed if it isn't challenged. And I really think that sums it up so well. It's the pinnacle. It's been allowed until this point. I'm not saying nobody's spoken up, but clearly not enough people, because if enough people had spoken up, it wouldn't happen anymore. So yeah, we need to continue advocating and, shouting about it and calling out the things that are done well as much as the things that aren't, so that when a company turns around and goes, oh, but how on earth did we do it? Or that is not financially viable at all. We can go, yes, it is. Look, they did it and they did it and they did it and they're a charity, etc., etc. So
Yeah, exactly. Those companies wanting to have the conversation, isn't it? Opening up the conversation, saying, these are our barriers. Obviously you're coming to me as an access consultant. They've got the perfect person there that's coming to them and is speaking. And all they needed to do was say, how could we do something? How could we do better? Like, do you have any advice? Unfortunately, at the moment, because that it's someone like myself who would, kind of like banging my head against the brick wall a lot of the time and really having to fight for stuff. I did change stuff and things did change and people did learn, but it's so difficult. And you can imagine if you've got someone that's been at that job for a long time, they've probably just lost the will a little bit. And that you've got the power that be the bottom line, the making money at the top, especially from those large receiving venues, the commercial venues. And it's like, people just, I think, are afraid as well. I think sometimes venues feel attacked.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not like excusing to them at all, because it's like, why do you feel attacked? Like, someone's coming to you and wanting to help. And again, it's just changing that whole narrative of what we're trying to achieve. And surely we just want the world to be a more accessible and enjoyable place for everyone. And like what you said, even from the booking process, even I'm just like trying to book something on your phone, because that's the most accessible thing for me. I'm busy, I'm on the go, I'm not using my laptop, I'm not like a laptop job. I've not been able to do that before because like my phone's frozen or like the website's not compatible, and you're like, why is it so difficult?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, talking about the booking process just now, and I mean, you've got your Christmas tree up in the background, so it's very apt, regardless of what's going out. But there is a venue that I absolutely adore. I have the most wonderful and welcoming time every single time I go, and I go maybe once every few months. I go every single time they have a new production on, and I love it. So they released their tickets for their spring season on the 23rd of December, which is great. And they were all obviously still at box office and still in the office just before Christmas. Now, this is one venue that unfortunately, if you want specific tickets or the access concession rate, and therefore, your essential companion to come with you, you have to email or phone them. There isn't a way to do that online, and their systems aren't quite there yet, which is so frustrating. But with this venue, it's okay because they know that and they're actively working to change that. It's not going to go no. So I can sort of, accept that. So I emailed on the 23rd of December, the day that they released it, and I got an automated response today. Unfortunately, we're out of office until something like the 6th of January for the holiday season. So I've been very concerned that one of the few dates that I can attend is going to sell out online over that period of time.
So you won't get to go.
And it's things like that. It's things like that just won't have been considered. They'll go, oh, great, Christmas. And then when we come back in the new year, we'll have sold loads of tickets. And it's like, yes, except you've forgotten about us. Like, you've forgotten about the whole demographic of your audience.
You thought about it as, an able-bodied person, and from a marketing point of view, really, haven't they? Not what's not on a bit. Yeah.
Which does make sense. But then at the same time, I'm just like, oh, it's so frustrating. One, or things like pre-sale at Saturday at 10 a.m. and you get, cheaper discounts or special things. You like book way in advance for a show, on the West End or whatever. And I'm going, great, but box office phone lines are only open Monday to Sunday. It's Monday to Friday, sorry. So what?
Yeah.
It's, it's really small. And I say small in, inverted commas, because it's not small at all, but it is small or in the grand scheme of things.
In their larger picture, but then like you said, a whole community, different communities of people saying, well, what about me? Like, my family can't access that, so I'm going to miss out. And I think a lot of people will, it's happened so many times that I think a lot of people end up just accepting that as well, even if it's actually happening to them. They'll just be like, well, it's what it is. I'm tired of fighting the good fight.
And it is exhausting. It is so exhausting. And I get told this a lot. So I'm a big advocate within the arts, but I also do some sort of more, I would say, corporate work. So with businesses, I work with shopping centres and like railway companies, etc., about how to make that more accessible.
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you're going to the theatre, you need to get there. A lot of people need accommodation to stay overnight and will want to do other things in the area. So I do a lot of work with companies that aren't theatres.
Right.
And it's things like, it's baffling, some of the things that aren't, like you said, aren't considered, and what important in their sort of big grand plan, and people that will just say, oh yeah, well, that's how it is. And it is I share my sort of experiences, both positive and negative, quite publicly as part of my sort of activism. And a lot of the responses I get are, why don't you report it? Why don't you call up and complain? Why don't you leave a bad review? And I'm like, because if I left a bad review or called up to complain or wrote
Every time,
formal email every single time, that would be my full-time job, and it's really exhausting, and it's actually
exhausting.
draining sort of mental health wise as well, because then you're just focusing on all the negatives. I say that not to sound diminishing, but you are. Like yesterday, I was supposed to go to Kew Gardens to see their Christmas lights trail, which was supposed to be beautiful, and I booked an accessible ticket, and the venue itself is great. Because of the weather and the fact that it was New Year's Day, TfL had closed some of the stations, and therefore my accessible travel route was no longer an option. And when I phoned customer service, they said that there was no one there. There wasn't they're called travel mentors. There was no one there to assist me. So I was not I would have had to pay for like an Uber or an Addison Lyft to get me there and back, because on the day, because of I'm saying some rain and some wind, it was quite bad. But because of weather and the fact that a lot of people were off on their hollybobs, I couldn't leave my house independently and go to where I needed to go, having had it booked for months. It's things like that, and I just go, oh God, it is exhausting. But then I sort of you just want to move on with your day and go, it is what it is. It shouldn't be, but it is. Instead of focusing on the negatives, I like to go, right, so what actively can I do to change that and make sure that it doesn't happen again? And sometimes there isn't something. But yeah, I'd rather sort of always try and find a silver lining, or, you know, a more productive approach where I can.
Like you said, you have to, otherwise you just lose mind, wouldn't you? You'd just be like, or you just stop doing stuff. You'd shut yourself away. You'd be like, right, well, I can't be bothered with the hassle of it, and that's what I'm not going to. And I think you're so amazing in the fact that you balance that kind of advocacy, but also you're so like positive with stuff. And I think that makes you, I'll put all your socials and everything kind of in the description of this episode, because honestly, follow Katie. So you've got all of it, you know, this advocate and stuff, and you're saying, you know, how to make things accessible. You've got like little venue reviews, be like, this is what to expect, which is again something all venues should really do. Everyone's got a smartphone in the marketing team, but you know, it's so nice to see it on socials. And then you've also got an amazing, you know, wicked dance routine that you'll just throw up there, and I'm like, yes, I love this.
Yeah, I as I said, like, it's that representation that's so important for me. So I still perform. I've just come off like a 6-week tour, which was amazing. But a lot of the time, you know, especially I go into sort of SEN specific schools or EMLD audiences. So it is sort of a very compact and not a very sort of public performance. I do want to share that I'm doing it, because again, that way a 14-year-old next year will find that on socials and go, oh my gosh, that exists. Maybe I could do that. Whereas I didn't find that out basically until it was my only option.
Yeah.
And I'd rather it not be sort of a last resort for people, or something that they go and look for. You know, if someone sees an advert for Oliver the Musical in the West End, I also want them to see, by the way, if you're a wheelchair user, come and audition for this. This show has great neurodivergent rep. An entirely blind and visually impaired cast at the Globe doing this new Shakespeare thing. So when you're going on your, you know, year 10 trip to revise for your English literature exam, go and see that instead of the sort of non-disabled focused one. And integrated way more into the mainstream would feel really successful.
100%. And again, like I trained in performing arts as well myself. At uni, I have knees that dislocate. That's the easiest way to say it without getting into kind of technical medical terms. You know, still a hypermobility. And a big part of my journey in form and at uni was we studied dance theatre, and I absolutely adored it. I love expressing myself through my body. You know, I love straight acting as well. I love singing, but like just for some reason that telling a story through movement, you know, not just kind of a musical theatre routine, but actually that kind of journey of physicality in general became a big part of my practice and kind of who I was. exactly like what you said when you were told at GCSE and you were 14, maybe you should think of something else because of your joints. Or ligaments. I was told exactly the same thing. Like, oh, like, you like people like Jasmine Barden and company, but they like throw themselves on the floor and like deviate and stuff. And they're like, I think it might be a bit physically demanding for your body. And you're like, oh, okay. So I can't, like you're saying, my body's not going to let me do that.
It's a yes or a no. There's never a sort of, oh, but we could try.
What? Yeah. And then, of course, I discovered places like Stop Gap Dance and, and places like that. And I realized people are doing it. But like what you said, it wasn't being taught to me. It wasn't being shown to me during my courses. And it also wasn't something that I would, being pointed towards the watch. And when you're a young adult, you're not, your brain isn't fully formed. You don't know everything, and you're not necessarily thinking. Some are, but you shouldn't be expected to be thinking in that way. There needs to be other people that are nurturing you and helping you. But you are not an adult yet. You are still figuring things out, and to not have that at training level I didn't end up auditioning for any dance theatre companies or doing it. I didn't, because I kind of expected it. And I went down a different, don't get me wrong, I still use dance practices in what I do, and I love what I do, and I love where my journey took me. But I do sometimes wonder, what if someone had nurtured that? Would I have maybe gone down that, actually just being a dance theatre professional and not doing the other stuff? Again, don't get me wrong, I love what I do now, but like, would that have been a part of my journey? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's so interesting. So, for example, I'm my carer and partner is hard of hearing, so we communicate quite a lot in SSE, which is sign supported English. And I've known BSL sort of my whole life growing up. I've had deaf friends and family and whatnot. But I've never ever learned any BSL in school ever, and I've been to a lot of schools across countries. Never once learned any sign language in school. I learned it all sort of outside. And I now, one of my massive career aspirations very much in the future, and I'm talking like decades, is to be a performance interpreter, because quite often at the theatre, because there isn't enough interactive performances, or a lot of theatres don't use Gala Pro, which blows my mind because why not? Or a lot of, caption performances are only on a Tuesday matinee. Me and they both work full time. Yeah. So quite often I find myself sitting there and I'm having to sit and interpret for my partner sort of on the sly whilst
you don't get to enjoy it.
Or because they've missed a line, or because then I missed the next one, or whatever it is. And I mean, regardless of enjoyment, it just shouldn't have to happen. That's my responsibility. I love them very much, but that's not my responsibility in the moment. But I often think, if I'd learnt BSL in schools, would I be a performance interpreter already? Is that what I would have done? Sort of now more than sort of consultancy and access coordination stuff. And it is looking down those routes. And absolutely, like you're saying, like nurturing. When I was at drama school, we were taught how to write an application for, further education at drama school, going to like BAs and MAs and, UCAS points and this and that. And I was like, university is not accessible for me. The 2 drama schools that were at the top of my list, I actually cannot get into the reception area of. So I'm not going to go and audition for them. I'd like to do something else. And during the sort of allotted sort of tutor times at drama school, I was sort of just left to my own devices. All of my other peers that were going down that route were given support and flyers and leaflets and packets and PowerPoint presentations on how to do these next steps. But because I wasn't following that path, I wasn't given any of it. It was not like there was a separate PowerPoint slide. There was one. And I think that's so often the thing. It's, the norm or the expected or the mainstream is often the least accessible for deaf, disabled, neurodivergent people of sort of all walks. Therefore, let's plan for that.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by, I post my choreography routines on my Instagram because I'd never seen a seated dancer. And now tap dance with my hands because my can't cope with it. And why is that? Like, I say that now, and to me, I go, well, yeah, that would be the obvious choice, I guess. If one bit can't do it, you just pick another bit that can.
It doesn't, if you're not taught it, if you're not fitting, click. So I used to teach seated dance classes in care homes. I used to sit down and do it, and it was called Golden Toes because it was expected to be for the elderly. Yeah. And to be in, care homes that were for people living just with dementia and we were just, too elderly to care for themselves now. And it was just geared towards that. And all of our music was like nostalgic music and like the props were, we had props and it was like the waltz and things like that. And I remember after doing it for a few months, I kind of questioned it and was like, why don't we go into other settings or like other care homes? There are other care homes and assisted living places that aren't just for old people. That there are other things. And then they were a bit like, we just didn't really think about it, or we've not been approached by these places. And I was like, well, I do access work at the theatre I work with, and I know some groups that might be interested. Would I be able to, weirdly with like one hat, with another hat and do something else for them? And they were like, well, yeah. Silly. Also, I'm getting myself more work, so I'm thinking, great for me as well.
Yeah.
And that, that company then opened up to working with, people with PMLD, people with brain injuries and of all generations. And also, we started going to community, centres and things, not just doing it in like a daycare or a assisted living setting, actually offering it at like events and stuff. And then they were able to kind of open their catalogue. And I was like, what? Not only have I just got you more work, but also like, look how many more people you're reaching. And exactly like what you said, I was doing it for months and I was like, oh yeah, it's easy to dance with the old people.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, it's not.
No, absolutely, which is why I think it's so important to share. I now work at Great Ormond Street Hospital and I zoom around the wards and the waiting rooms in my power-assisted wheelchair, and the amount of young people and their families that we spend more time talking than dancing because they've never seen an adult look happy and be successful and visibly disabled at the same time, because they are in a clinical setting, and mobility aids or sort of anything medically sort of geared is seen as like a negative or something really difficult or like that's a challenge currently. And just seeing me exist, not even chatting about being disabled or doing dance, which is what I'm employed there to do as a resident, just actually watching me exist in a positive light, that is almost radical for some of them.
Yeah.
And it both warms my heart and breaks it at the same time, because it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It's the same as when, we go to see something and it does have integrated captions and audio description has been written into the script and not added sort of secondly. And the captions are creatively integrated into the set and not just on a screen.
Yeah, not just right on the up and you get like a crook.
That makes me so happy, and I get so excited when I see that, because, oh my gosh, that's so rare. And then as soon as that sort of peak of excitement hits, I go, do you know, it's so rubbish that I'm this excited, because I shouldn't be excited, because it shouldn't be this rare.
Yeah.
It's not like finding a 4-leaf clover in your back garden, because this should be the norm. This should be it. And the law of the sector than it is. So I can't wait for the day where I walk in and don't feel excited about success, because that's what it is. Yeah, it sounds so strange to say, but I can't wait for the day that my job isn't needed. Yeah. And it's never going to happen, because like you say, there's always more that you can do in the art. So hopefully I'm always going to be required, and I hope so, because
it just becomes a bit easier. And it's easier, those conversations become easier, and those venues become more welcoming, and those shows get on board quicker. Your admin time will be shaved. That's what we hope. That's what we hope.
Yeah, me and my inbox need to be far more unfamiliar with each other than we currently are.
I think that is like a goal for 2025. We'll put out on there in the universe. Less admin pacing to use, more active access consultancy, where she can use her performance skills and shine and do that. And you said about Gala Pro, and just quickly before we move on, I don't know if like everyone knows about it. Would you be able to summarize it? I know it's a free app people can download, but like, how can they use it?
So Gala Pro is a phenomenal piece of technology developed actually over on Broadway, because the rules there are very different, and they do have to have a certain amount of audio describing caption performances, something like 4 weeks after press night or after previews or something. That's great over there. So the Schubert organization, which are a little bit like our version of ATG or LW or NIMAC, they own most of the venues sort of in the heart of New York. They own this piece of technology called Gala Pro, which is a free app for audiences to download. Unfortunately, it's not free for venues, but it's technology that basically gets installed into the building, into the venue. And I have no idea how all the electronics work. It's far more advanced than any of my cleverness. But what I do know is that basically when a show comes in and the LX operator is programming the lighting desk, the app programs captions at the same time. So you type the script in, and as the LX cues are fired throughout the show, captions literally on your phone come up in live time, and you just sit and watch the show with your phone there. And now it is not the most equitable option, because if an actor misses a line, the captions aren't going to know that, they're pre-typed. If we skip a scene, or there's a show stop, or something goes wrong, or it's fired in the wrong order, or if the Wi-Fi goes shoddy or whatever, then difficult. It's like
there's always stuff, isn't there? So
and
it
does the same with audio description. So you just plug your earphones in, or you put one earbud in, and it will audio describe the show again in time as set with the lighting cues. And excuse me, the math is something like, if a theatre has it for, I don't know if it's like 3 or 5 years, and program it for each show and then pay the app usage fee, it is so much cheaper and more efficient for them to do that than it would be for them to like buy caption screen and then have to hire a live captioner for every single show and a separate audio describer. And obviously live is always better, but in terms of budget, that is never going to be financially viable unless they integrate it into the performance. So Gala Pro is a phenomenal interim option, and I think
amazing.
There's like 8 shows maybe in London that use it, and a few regional venues. But again, they then have to program it for each show that comes in. So for some of the, we're getting loads of like one-off concerts or one-night performances at the moment, and they don't bother using it for it. So it's always like, make the most of it. But yes,
you've got it in your venue, like use it.
So many venues need to use it. It's a really, really, really great piece of technology.
Oh, honestly, Gala Pro, I'm going to put a link to that as well in the message on this, because it's just so great to have all of those things at your fingertips. And again, but just knowing about it. If you don't know, you don't know. And, we've got people like you that are shouting about things and doing the great work. Now, you work across the arts, not just within your consultancy with Access, that you are an actor, a facilitator. You facilitated with me before, and of course you're a dancer. We've spoken a bit about your secret dancing. And you're a reviewer, which we've spoken about. You review lots of different things. So you do a plethora of things across the arts. So I feel like you must have some stories. You must have done some wild and wonderful things. But what would you say is the weirdest and most wonderful job you've ever done?
It's such a bizarre one, and it's not going to sound as fantastical as you might think, because I have with some interesting characters and had some interesting contracts and showed up to jobs that I thought were going to be one thing and were actually like totally. I think the one that I would pick, and the one that I feel most confident sharing publicly without possibly receiving an email from somebody being angry
about NDA.
I was, again, probably about 13 or 14, and I'd gone for a headshot shoot. I had been asked to update my headshots with a few agencies and whatnot, so I went, and the photographer that I had was brilliant, but he was I had never worked with him before, and he told me at 13 or 14, he was like, I because he knows a lot of shows and plays and whatnot, because he photographs actors. He was like, I think you would be great if they did a stage adaptation of The Handmaid's Tale. Now, I don't know if you know that.
I do. Yeah.
Story very well at all. But it's not something that I would A, expect a 13-year-old to have read, or B, suggest that they are involved in.
So no, that's very inappropriate. I'm nervously laughing. But I'm like, what is happening?
No, he meant it. He meant it nicely, I suppose, because I can have quite a haunting face. I love musical theatre, but actually I think I'm probably better at straight acting, because I can be so straight faced, where I just have too much fun with it, which is great sometimes. But then a year or 2 later, I actually got booked for a job, and it was a show called, it was World's Worst Hauntings, or World's Most Haunted or something. It is a TV show on somewhere, and I've never actually watched it back. But I was hired to play a ghost, and I literally had to spend the whole time with my hair proper like this. And I had my braces taken off for it, because obviously at that time you didn't have braces or whatever. I had to spend the whole time grey and dark and quite creepy. And then the photographer that I had the headshots with, that I applied to the job for, was like, see, I told you, you'd be great in something like that. And it was just such a little, and I had the best time on the job. And, you know, at the time, I didn't realise how weird it was. But looking back nearly 10 years later, now, going, was that okay? Was that weird? I mean, it was great fun. I felt very safe on both sets. And
I'm gonna ask that. I was like, did you feel safe?
safe on both sets. It was great. There were adult chaperones present, and you know, other
meant to be
other children in the cast. But I look back to now and go, would I tell a 13-year-old I think they look like a haunted, abused? Maybe not. But I mean, I'm glad it worked out. Do you know what
I mean? It was, you know, it was not the right example for him to use. I wonder if he also had a little like internal monologue that also was thinking as soon as it came out of his mouth, I bet he was going, oh, maybe that wasn't the right thing. I wonder if he's thought about it since. Although maybe when he messaged you saying, see, I told you, it was just.
Maybe that was him, because it was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years later. Maybe that was him going, like, haha, see, I made that comment, but it did work out, didn't it? Like, maybe that's a big from another thing.
Without the whole being like, it wasn't weird.
I don't know, but to be fair, I will put this out into the universe right now. If they ever did a stage adaptation of The Handmaid's Tale, I would be there at the casting call. Like, you are right. I love dark stuff like that. I hate witches. I can't watch a horror. I can't read thrillers. God, my nervous system.
You know, I love a true crime, Katie. I love crime.
Put me in one. Fine. I think if I know the
character and you know it, you're not having to receive it. You're
no jump scares for me, thank you. Absolutely not.
Where do we go? We're going to see you in something scary and spooky coming up.
Manifest.
Maybe something not as traumatic as Handmaid's Tale, but again, you play the character, so as long as you are emotionally stable and ready to do that, then we'll put that out there. I feel like everyone knows what Handmaid's Tale is now. If you don't, Google it. And I feel like I need to do some like photos up and put you in one of those like headdresses.
Red is my colour. I do suit him.
So what are they called? They're like almost like horse blinkers, aren't they?
Like the hoods with the almost, oh my god, it's like the traitors. It is very much like that.
Literally like the traitors. A lot more messed up.
Yeah, deeper,
a lot deeper than the traitors. Oh my god, it's so funny. And right now, I'm glad you got a TV gig from it, and were the headshots good?
Yes. Oh my god. I used them to go to drama school, and then like sort of aged, a whole year. So my playing age is now like teenager instead of child, because I'm one of these actors with such a baby face that I cannot audition for roles of my biological age because I don't look old enough. And I've been told that I'll be great for it in future. Yeah.
Well, I am. Now this is where I've got to see your reaction on your face to know if you're going to be like, do I agree with her? I've always been told that I look younger than I am. Well, you're going to go right answer. Thank you, Katie. And I am. I mean, I'm 33 now, and I'm very grateful that some people still are like, "Oh, you were like mid to late 20s," and I'm like, "No, but I've still got it, and it just means again I've got that wider playing age, because I can look old. You've always been made to look a little bit older, and when you speak as well, I mean your mannerisms. I'm 5'10" as well, but actually never, I'm tall, so I've never, even with my baby face, really had like a super young casting because of my height. It just kind of like, threw me up there.
Yeah, no, I'm the total opposite. And especially now being seated all of the time, I am shorter than everyone, irrespectively of what my actual height is. So, you put me in pigtails, I genuinely, I played a year 6. I played a primary school character last year, believably. So, which is great.
How old are you now?
I am nearly 22.
So you're still baby. So
I am a baby anyway, but I'm not quite 11 anymore, but I can pull it off.
Honestly, and that's the thing. I can do early 20s still.
Yeah, good.
It's a 10-year thing, isn't it? It's a 10-year thing. Keep using those moisturisers and that vitamin D. It's been such an interesting conversation today. Thank you so much. It's so great to just talk to someone that's passionate about access. I am. And if there's anything, I always say, if there's anything I can do to kind of help advocate more, obviously I work within accessibility, within multiple jobs that I do, but you're having the conversations. And like you said, we need more allies and, people to stand with people in general with everything. It doesn't just be those that are going through stuff that have to shout about it. Like, we need people to support people. And this is one of those remits that needs to happen. So everyone listening to this, we need you to stand with accessibility and make, hold people accountable. We didn't get to go into it. We've not had time, but it's not just theatre, it's your outdoor art festivals, your live entertainment gigs. That's a massive thing. I'd love to talk to someone about gigs and concerts. If there's anyone listening that would like to come on, I'd love to chat about that from an accessibility and production point of view. So if you know anyone, then absolutely would love to chat about that. Before we kind of sign off today, Katie, is there anything you'd like to kind of shout about what you're doing, or shout about for anyone else before we pop up?
I've just had my sort of primary job confirmed for 2025, so I'm very lucky to be sort of booked and blessed. But my calendar is officially open for my disability equality training sessions. So for people that want maybe like sort of a one and done brief overview of access or how to make a company more accessible, or sort of a more long term, maybe like a monthly catch up, etc., about how to just be integrating those accommodations into their work, whatever that is, across the arts and culture sector. And then I say even, in more sort of commercial and whatnot, corporate businesses. Yeah, now's a great time to get in touch because, like I said, I've had my diary confirmed. So bookings are open, and just ping me an email.
Amazing. And I'll put all of that, I'll put her email, I'll put your socials, any links you give me, I'll pop them down below so that you can see it. And thank you so much for being my first guest of 2025.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Oh, it's been so great to chat, and all the best for this year with your work.
Thank you, and you.
Thanks for being part of the arts, Katie. Bye.
Bye.